Greetings, East Africa, and thank you for joining us on yet another episode of Your World. Now, this morning we focus on pregnancy and infant loss, something that weighs heavily on both parents and a loss that is increasingly becoming common, especially in sub-Saharan Africa. We not only speak of how to cope with pregnancy and infant loss, but also how to prevent the occurrence of the same. I will be joined by a gynecologist, a psychologist, and those with lived experience with pregnancy and infant loss. My name is Gladys, Gachanja, and here is what else you can expect. How do you cope with the death of an unborn child or infant? We find out. Today, we look at international communities that are breaking the silence of a child loss.
And this will be a game changer, we think, in the fight against COVID-19.
The World Health Organization says large-scale introduction of antigen-based tests is about to begin. And Dubai introduces a facial recognition system in public transport to beef up security. Thank you for joining us on this broadcast. As I mentioned, today we focus on pregnancy and infant loss. So our question of the day to you is, have you experienced a miscarriage or infant loss? What was the biggest challenge in coping with this loss? Share your experience using that hashtag New Normal on our social media platforms. And remember, you can also reach us using that number at the bottom of your screen. Well, before we get to that conversation, let's take a look at the numbers in as far as the impact of COVID-19 around the world is concerned. And today it stands at 44,236,898 confirmed cases of COVID-19. Out of that number, 32,444,162 have totally recovered, and we have lost 1,171,337 people to COVID-19 around the world. Now, as by yesterday's briefing by the Ministry of Health in Kenya, the number stands at 50,833 confirmed cases of COVID-19, and out of that number, 34,832 have totally recovered, and 934 Kenyans have succumbed to COVID-19. Again, there is a clarion call and a red flag that COVID-19 is still with us. It seems to be claiming more lives, and of course, those numbers of infections are also increasing by the day. So do take care, take the necessary precautions to ensure you avoid contracting COVID-19. Now, let's look at some of the stories making headlines globally. Now, Christian groups hold a prayer walk and demonstration in central London in support of youth protests in Nigeria that have spiraled into widespread unrest. Nigerian authorities struggled to halt looting across the country as crowds defied curfew orders in the latest wave of unrest sweeping Africa's most populous nation.
So this demonstration is here in London. I'm a British-born Nigerian, and even though I'm not on the ground in Nigeria, I do feel for those that are suffering the brunt of it. So I think those that are here can lend a voice and listen to what people are saying, and if there's any way they can help on an individual or collective basis, then chip in. I mean, it's a real problem.
Yeah, so on Tuesday, when the attack happened at Lekki Tollgate in Lagos, I was deeply hurt, I was saddened, And it was just painful to see that people who were protesting for their rights could be attacked with live ammunition. Some were killed, some seriously injured, and it was disheartening. So we're here today protesting in the UK. No harm has come to us, but it's a shame that in Nigeria, when citizens are protesting for their own rights, they come to harm. So what brought me out here today is that I'm hurt and I want to see change.
So we need to stand in solidarity with our young people and to ensure that police brutality has to come to an end. Because look, we can't keep going on and on with the same methods, the same rules for 60 years. This is now 2020. We could not have been protesting Black Lives Matter protests in America, in the UK, and in Nigeria, our country of origin. Our government doesn't even care about black lives. We need to care all of the time, every day, all of the week.
Elsewhere, people on the streets of Khartoum reacted after U.S. President Donald Trump announced that Sudan and Israel have agreed to normalize their relations. I do not see any problem with normalization with Israel, said Mohammed Al-Tahir. Now, Nasir Eldin Mahmoud says he is against normalization because normalization does not serve the interests of Sudan, neither now nor tomorrow. Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, who met the head of Sudan's ruling council, General Abdel Fattah al-Burhan in Uganda this year, thanked Sudanese leaders and U.S. President Trump in his statement. The February Netanyahu-Burhan encounter met with surprise and some hostility in Sudan at the same time, and the country's cabinet later denied that Burhan had made promises of normalization. Let's look at Matters Health, and the World Health Organization's Regional Director for Africa says that the anticipated large-scale introduction of antigen-based rapid diagnostic tests is a potential game changer in the continent's fight against the COVID-19 pandemic.
Countries are gearing up to introduce antigen-based rapid diagnostic tests on a large scale. And this will be a game changer, we think, in the fight against COVID-19. These high-quality rapid tests will help meet the huge unmet need for testing in Africa. We've seen that African countries have faced a significant gap throughout the pandemic. For example, Senegal has significantly boosted its testing capacity, but it still has testing 14 times less than the Netherlands. Nigeria is testing 11 times less than Brazil. With rapid testing, authorities can stay a step of COVID-19 ahead by scaling up active case finding in challenging environments like crowded urban neighborhoods and communities out in the countryside.
Now, 3,000 people died in Deko during the 2011 post-election violence in the Ivory Coast. Now, 10 years on, and as a new election approaches, fear remains in this city in the west of the country. A resident of Carrefour says we don't have an ethnicity problem. Ivory Coast itself does not have an ethnicity problem. It was the politicians who sent us political problems. When people come with sentences like, it is because I am such and such ethnicity that they do not want me to become a candidate. When the other one says, yes, I am Ivorian, that's what started these problems. Here we lived in perfect harmony.
Et puis là, il y a un autre trou.
And to our focus of the day, for Wanjiru Kihusa, motherhood came so close yet so far. She has twice lost babies she was expecting through a miscarriage, but through her profound grief, she found bravery and opened up her heart to other women like her, had their dreams shattered through the loss of their little ones. Now, through her organization Still a Mom, she helps pick up the pieces. Here's her story. Wanjiru Kihusa personifies strength and tenacity. From her deep pain, she found profound bravery to talk about her dark and painful past. Wounds inflicted by her sudden and painful loss of her two children through miscarriages and within the same year.
At the time I was blogging, so I was scared of sharing my story in public because I had been in the social media space and I know the kind of negativity that comes with it. But for some reason, I can't even say why, but I decided to just dip my toe and share my story and see what kind of response it was. A bit of it was curiosity because I was seeing, 1 in every 4 women, and I knew the numbers in Kenya were higher because those statistics are actually for the US and the UK. Put up the blog post, wow. Not expected, but all these inboxes flew in. A lot of phone calls, emails, Facebook inboxes, and a lot of Me Too situations arose, Those emails turned into coffee dates or lunch dates, and then,
From her loss, she found a way to give, opening up her heart to tell her story. Through her support group, Still a Mom, she cast a light upon the dark parts of other mothers struggling to heal from the loss of their little ones.
And so I called up a few friends. Some were counselors, some were not. And so for the counselors, I asked them, okay, how does counseling work? If I was to put together a support group for these women, what would I do? One of them told me, support groups should not be infinite. You can't meet forever, And the goal is not to fix people. It's just to get them to jumpstart that journey, like to start to seek to heal.
In 2015, Still a Mom was born with only 8 members, and 3 years later, it has grown through personal and hospital referrals and walking through the strength of partnerships, donors, and volunteers. And from her work, women like Wanjiru Githenji found belief again. She shares a special bond with her daughters, who are her miracle. After 2 miscarriages caused by an incompetent cervix, she had lost all hope of ever becoming a mother.
Losing my second child took me to the pits below, totally, absolutely, in every sense of the word. And then I remembered Still a Mom. So I inboxed Wanjiru on Facebook and I told her, hey, this is my story. Then she had also thought of coming up with a support group. So I was among the first cloud of people she held together for a first support group.
If it's speaking to a counselor, if it is seeking spiritual counsel, whatever it is that you need to do, please do it. And the importance of that is it will prepare your heart and mind for life after the loss.
For Wanjiru, her 1.5-year-old son is her miracle. Doctors had told her she could not have children as her fallopian tubes had been permanently blocked. She, however, still considers herself a mother of 3.
Children can be born to our family, but they will never be that other person who was lost. So I think if we come from that premise, it will guide us in what to say, how to help. When we start by thinking that this is a true loss, somebody who was loved has died, period.
And that conversation definitely puts us in focus of what we'd like to address this morning, pregnancy and infant loss. And to help us understand this journey better, Dr. Karen Muthembwe in studio. She is an obstetrics and gynecology resident. In the other studio, Diana Chepgoskei, who is the lead psychologist and program manager at Still a Mom. Virtually, we're joined by Ashley Muteti, who is executive director at Zurich Irene Zelani Foundation and who also has a lived experience with pregnancy loss. David Gikonge and Andongo Muremi, who also have a lived experience with pregnancy and infant loss. Thank you all for joining us on this conversation. And I'll start off with Daktari. We need to define what pregnancy and infant loss is.
Oh, thank you very much, Gladys. I'm really excited to be here. So this is a big, it's actually like a pandemic, just the way we call Corona and the rest. Pregnancy loss has different stages, and basically it's losing, just from the words it is, losing pregnancy or losing a baby. And there are different levels at which people can lose a pregnancy, and it can be when the baby is not viable, and then there's a time when the baby is viable. There's a time after delivery within 7 days. So we divide it according to those stages depending on the cause. So we call losing a pregnancy before 28 weeks as an abortion or a miscarriage. People don't like the word abortion, so we call it a miscarriage instead. So that is before 28 weeks or approximately 7 months. Above 7 months, all the way to the first 7 days of life. Now that one we call perinatal death. Perinatal death. After 7 days to 28 days or within a month, now that one we call a neonatal death. After that, up to 1 year, we call it an infant mortality. And then between 1 and 5 years, we call it under 5 mortality. So depending on the different stages, there are different causes for that neonatal death.
Okay, so there are terms that we're using here.
Yes.
A miscarriage, a stillbirth, there's SIDs. I mean, define these for us with the different stages that you mentioned.
Yes. Okay, so if you have between 0 and 7 months, now that one we call it an abortion. Why? Because it's before viability. When you deliver the baby, a pregnancy before 7 months, the baby might not survive. And that is in sub-Saharan Africa. In other countries, they might call it below 24 weeks. Now that's an abortion. In another country like the US, where they have better facilities, other places like the Scandinavian countries. So their limit is up to around 24 weeks. They have children, babies who have survived. But in our setup is up to 28 weeks, whether you're in a private hospital or in the government hospital. Above that, a baby can survive in some situations, depending on the condition of the mother and the baby. So above 28 weeks, all the way to, 28 weeks, which is 7 months, all the way to delivery up to 7 days. Now that one, if a baby dies in between there, we now call it perinatal death. Why perinatal? Because it's during pregnancy conditions of the mother that can cause the death of the baby. After 7 days to that 1 month, that's when we call it a neonatal death.
Okay, so where do we use the term stillbirth?
A stillbirth is between the same 28 weeks, the 7 months, up to 7 days.
Okay.
No, actually up to delivery. Up to delivery.
Okay.
Because a stillbirth is usually a baby who should have survived above viability, but did not survive.
Okay.
Yes.
And there's mention of SIDs. What are those?
SIDs. I haven't heard about them. Can have the full.
All right, and I think we can bring in Adana on this one because I'm sure there's so many mothers that come and say the child
Or sudden infant death.
Yeah,
oh, that's what you meant to say.
Yes.
Oh, okay. Yes.
So that is after the baby is born.
Yes, after the baby is born. So you have like an actual sudden death of a baby, because sometimes we don't understand why, but most of the time is because of the perinatal area during a mother's pregnancy. There could have been an issue, you know, things like diabetes, hypertension, that could have affected a baby during, either before delivery or during pregnancy, or during that delivery there was an issue, and then the baby was okay, and then maybe the first few weeks you have now a sudden death, which was not very clear, and it happens even at home. Yes.
Okay, and there are times where they have said the child just died in their sleep. No sickness, nothing connected to their health. That is the one we call cot death.
Yes, yes, almost similar to the SID.
Yeah.
And also the same things, they could have been affected by, and sometimes we do not know what could have caused it, but if you look into the history, and sometimes we usually do postmortems on such babies to find out whether there was an initial problem within the structure. Most of the time it's a congenital abnormality, probably of the heart, or during the, the formation of the baby that was not identified immediately after delivery.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Now, are we ready with Diana? Okay, then let's hear from somebody who's walked in these shoes, and that is Ashley Muteti. You lost your first pregnancy and it was a miscarriage. What were the circumstances?
Actually, it wasn't a miscarriage. It was, I had preeclampsia. And preeclampsia is a condition in pregnancy characterized by high blood pressure and protein in urine. And so I actually delivered early. It was very severe. I spent a whole month in hospital. And at the point of delivery, my organs were failing, my kidney and liver. This is damage caused by the hypertension. So I delivered at 31 weeks. The baby developed complications in the neonatal intensive care unit. And she had a condition called NEC, which was a problem with the intestines. And she succumbed to NEC after 49 days of life.
Okay, our condolences to you. And this was your first pregnancy, right?
Yes, this was my first pregnancy.
Okay, so you went on to be blessed with another child, but the same risk with preeclampsia was still alive in you, right?
Yes. After the death of my baby, I really didn't want to get pregnant again. And we put every measure in place together with my doctors and to ensure I wouldn't get pregnant again. But I got pregnant again and I got preeclampsia, and it was quite severe. This time though, I was not admitted, but I underwent a condition called placenta abruption, which means the placenta detached itself from the uterus, hence causing a lot of bleeding. So I was bleeding really bad. It's something that usually can cause death. Doctor can attest to this. And my baby was very small. I delivered at 31 weeks. My first baby, was 30 weeks. My second baby was 31 weeks. And she was weighing 975 grams. So at the point of delivery, in fact, she was totally flat. So the doctors had to resuscitate her because I was losing oxygen. I was losing blood. So there was no oxygen that was flowing to her. So thankfully, she survived. Thankfully, she survived.
And how old is she now?
She's turning 2 in January.
Yay! There is a hope and definitely an encouragement there to the many that are facing pregnancy or infant loss. And Daktari, she's mentioned a few things there. Preeclampsia.
Yes.
Explain that to us.
Okay, so preeclampsia is usually a condition that can occur in pregnancy. This is a pregnancy-induced hypertension state that starts usually above 20 weeks of gestation. We count 20 weeks instead of the months because we're able to have an exact, almost an exact number. So above 20 weeks, some women can develop hypertension just out of nowhere, probably because they had a history of hypertension in their family, but during the attachment of that placenta, something happens and above 20 weeks, so they develop high blood pressure. When this high blood pressure is very high, there's usually mild and severe. It can present with body swelling, headache, abdominal pains, and it is sometimes a bit difficult to manage it. So in this case, and you might even produce some protein in your urine to affect some parts of your body. So we call this preeclampsia. Yes, preeclampsia. So there is gestational hypertension, there is preeclampsia. Preeclampsia, we look at it when the hypertension is very high, or you're now producing some proteins in urine, or you have severe effects due to the hypertension above 20 weeks. So preeclampsia can be very, very severe. In fact, sometimes we have to deliver. This is one of the reasons we have to deliver a baby too early for some women, especially when it's severe. If it's mild, we are able to hold it. She talked about abruptio placenta. one of the reasons why we deliver a baby a bit early is usually to save the mother most of the times, and if we are able to save the baby at least above 28 weeks, remember the viability,
Yes.
we are happy above 28 weeks, but again, it's still a very gray area between 28 and 34 weeks. So you can see at least with Ashley, it was between 28 and 34 for her first pregnancy. Even the second one was around 31 weeks. So it might affect other organs in the body, like the brain, the lungs, and now even a baby is part of your body and it's being affected by the hypertension. So what happens in the placenta, because of the high blood pressure differences between the mother and the baby, there is burst of vessels, and that's why you have bleeding where the placenta is.
Okay, so if somebody already had hypertension before pregnancy, as a doctor, how do you handle such a case?
Yes, that's a very good one, because if you have hypertension prior, we usually like to manage that hypertension before you get pregnant. And that's when we come to preconception care. Every woman should actually go to the hospital before they even plan to get pregnant. At least get your hypertension, check your blood pressure, whether you have diabetes and all this. If you had hypertension prior, we start you on medication very, very early. We monitor you. When we are happy with the blood pressure, we say, go ahead and get your baby. We cannot stop you from getting a baby. You still need to get a baby. Yes, so the good thing is that sometimes if it's well controlled, you don't necessarily have to develop preeclampsia. You remember, preeclampsia is the high blood pressures that are not being able to be reduced properly, and then it's affecting other organs, and you even have something called proteinuria, the protein in urine. So you don't have to develop preeclampsia. There's a medication we give you even before the 20 weeks, because 20 weeks is our cutoff point.
Okay.
So you have your high blood pressure medication, you have your folic, and there's something else we usually add to just reduce the possibility of developing preeclampsia. You'll hear some people having junior aspirin or something like that. That is to just try and the studies show that they reduce the chances of getting preeclampsia.
Okay. All right, Diana, I'm glad you can hear us now. And how can you describe pregnancy and infant loss grief?
Thank you so much, Gladys. Pregnancy and infant loss grief is the natural psychological response, or rather emotional response, that bereaved families experience right after losing their children. And getting pregnant is an exciting experience, and losing a baby is such an unexpected experience that most parents deal with, and it tends to be very devastating and comes with a lot of psychological reactions. So grief is the natural response that bereaved families experience, and it comes in different, in a myriad of emotions, right from shock, numbness, confusion, and all through the 5 stages of grief, where they try to navigate and to understand the new normal and the new reality of living with no baby.
Okay, is there a timeline to this grieving period? You know, how long is healthy grieving?
There is no a timeline to a grieving a period, because number one, grieving is very unique. Grieving is personal, and it can take as long as it takes as you try to understand the new emotions, and because your life has been shifted. Most parents go through identity crisis because they now try to find meaning in this new life. They get to a place of asking many questions like, why did I have to lose the baby? Who am I apart from a mother? Who am I apart from a father? So it can take as long, and most people report to up to 10 years, especially if you haven't adequately processed your grief. So it is very personal, it's very unique. There is no time frame attached to a grieving period.
Okay, and we'll get to understand more about the same and hear from those who've walked in these shoes. Let's bring in the couple, David Gekunge and Andongo Moremi. It has been a long journey for you, having experienced 3 pregnancy and infant losses. David, or is it Anne, whichever wants to go first, tell us your story.
Our story is quite long, but I will shorten it. The first loss happened immediately after our honeymoon. So it was a honeymoon baby at around 20 weeks. And I didn't know what was child loss or pregnancy loss. And so it was very shocking. And I had to be induced, and we lost that one. It was a girl. Then the second loss was I got pregnant again. Now we have this girl. She's called Shanice. She's well and she's turning 4 this December. I love children, so I got into it again. The third born, and the boy passed away immediately after birth. That is, I delivered him at 40 weeks. But before we had been told by the doctor, probably when I give birth to him, he may not live for long. Actually, maybe he would have taken 3 because he had conditions, he had just problems and abnormalities. And so he passed away immediately after birth. But he was alive, and then he stayed like 2-3 minutes, and then he passed on. Then after that, I got pregnant again, and this time it was around 3 weeks, 4 weeks. I was just bleeding. I bled like a whole week. I was given bed rest, and I just bled, and that cleared that way. Your sick washwa, it just went like that, and yes, here we are. But thank God for Diana. She has walked us through the journey. And now we tell our story with more strength and courage, and thank God.
Wow, that is quite a story, and it's an encouragement to see you smile through it. And you'll tell us more about how you've got into this, because I'm sure it's not been an easy journey. But Anne, when you lost your first baby and the second one also within the first few weeks, what did the doctors say? Is it something, a condition you have?
Apparently my husband also is a nurse, so I think he can give more info on that.
Okay.
But all the pregnancies, they are not really, all those losses, they are not related. Like the first baby had a knot. I think she played, and that there was a cord knot. So they called it a true knot, that he can explain it better.
Yes.
Then the second one, he had conditions with the heart and the head. Then the third one was just bleeding. So the doctor has been telling us there's no connection. We cannot tell this is I have blood pressure or sugars. I don't know.
Okay, let's hear from David. So when they explain to you, what exactly do they say is a correlation, if any?
All right, thank you so much, Gladys, for having us. The 3 losses really are not at all related. Not at all. So because the one, as she has explained, the baby was perfectly normal, but then a bit playful. So the knot comes about, and there is no blood flow to the fetus. The baby just comes. In fact, I remember we were going for a routine scan. So thanks goodness, when we walked in and we were doing the routine scan where you can actually tell the gender. So when we went in to do the scan, the sonographer looks at it. I put in, so of course I could try to figure out 1 or 2 things. So I saw, of course, the baby did not have a heartbeat, but of course I was in denial. I did not want to tell Anne. So we were sent to a senior sonographer. So as we are going, I am already now beginning experiencing my own emotions, but Anne is oblivious of what is happening. So we go to the senior sonographer, we do the same. But interestingly, while we were there, she just said, "Oh, you are the couple. This is the couple with the IUFD." I don't know I'm a nurse because I was not donned in my professional uniform. So, so she said it's an IUFD. So she did not think I really could figure this out. But of course, at that time, then that confirmed my worst fears that we have lost this one. It was a routine scan, but we cannot go home with my wife. She has to stay behind and be induced. So that was the first one. The second one, I think, again, we were doing a routine scan at around 20 weeks. Remember, we went to the University of Nairobi, radiology department. So when we were coming out, the report, of course, had something that caught my attention. They said that the head looked a little bit bigger than the baby. I mean, proportionally to the baby. So when they said that, we thought we needed to seek more specialized medical attention. So we went to Aga Khan. Aga Khan, we found a good doctor there by the name Dr. Wanyonyi. He's a fetal maternal specialist. So we did the scans. At that time, he told us that there was a swelling of the vein in the brain. And that's what the scan showed, because the baby was still too small. The baby was retarded. The baby was not putting on weight. I was around 22, 23 weeks. So what we agreed with the doctor is, because the baby did not look very good, so he told us we will observe this. We will do scans every week, every Saturday. And then when we are around 28 weeks, going to 32 weeks, thereabout, we will see whether there is any improvement, especially with the weight of the baby. If there is none, and with your consent, we can then terminate the pregnancy. Then he told us, however, that he believed in miracles, so he would not coerce us into taking any decision. So we went through that journey, doing scans every week. Miracles began taking place. The baby began putting on weight. So we were hopeful that even the issue with the swelling, in the medical terms, it would be called an aneurysm at the base of the brain. So they said, with this aneurysm, we can observe and see if the baby puts on weight adequately. Then after delivery, we can allow ourselves to go through the surgery and see whether we can do much. So at 32 weeks, the baby, I think, had already gotten to around 1 point something kgs. And that was a good sign. So we decided, what is the harm anyway? It's not that the mother is not at any risk. Wait for what and see what will happen. When just about 36 weeks, because the issue, we are still continuing to do the weekly scans, remember. So at that time, the vein is still swollen. So there's a lot of blood being shunted. So that's what actually was causing the baby not to develop, because that swelling was so huge that it was pouring a lot of blood, not allowing the rest of the body parts to receive adequate circulation. So at that time, we were advised to take a fetal MRI. So we did a fetal MRI, and I think that really crushed us, where it was remaining, really, because it told us that the baby did not have a brain. So what was actually the entire space where the brain ought to have been, that's where the blood was being shunted. So we were told that we were advised again, taking a cesarean section in view of the baby, because chances were very minimal. The complications, the issues with the baby were incompatible with life, unless a huge miracle happened. But we still believed in miracles. We went through full term, delivered the baby. I did not get a chance of seeing the baby alive, because the baby was delivered at around midnight. So I had left my wife just having been induced. I think because of the issues of the baby was not able to induce labor on himself. So the mother, Anne, had to really go through the chemical, that's the medical induction. After induction, the labor really accelerated. And within just less than, I think, 2 hours. So I had just left hoping to come back after freshening up. By the time I was scanning, the baby had already long been delivered and did not survive, unfortunately. So the third one, as she has said, was a miscarriage early in gestation. We had just done a scan to confirm that indeed she was expecting. And shortly after, of course, bleeding begins. So she goes given bed rest. After a week, bleeding doesn't stop. So when we went now to confirm whether everything was still okay now, doing like a third scan or so, the uterus was empty. Of course, just now going through the motions of healing.
Yeah. Okay, that is quite a story. And again, I say you are the faces of encouragement for so many parents who've walked this journey. And Karen, just listening to him, definitely David has a more, better understanding of the medical aspect of it. But when they say none of those incidences are related, how do you explain that? Of course, the common denominator is the mother, but different circumstances have led to pregnancy and infant loss.
Yeah, it's a very, very sad situation, but I'm very happy because they are together and they're helping each other, because this really means a lot, especially 3 pregnancies. 3 pregnancies, you can imagine 1 pregnancy, how hurtful it is. You can even remember she remembers the first one was a girl. So you can get how intense this is. In their case, the first one are not, that one is completely, it doesn't, it's not related to anything. You know, the baby could have been turning around and the knot happened, and ideally we should be able to catch it on a scan as they did, but they got it maybe a bit late. For the second one and the third one, we can see there could have been a problem with the formation of the pregnancy. The two of them might be related in terms of the formation of the pregnancy, because we see this, the third pregnancy, it just came out on its own, and most of the time it's a structural problem, a chromosomal problem, or something that could have happened during the formation. The first few weeks of pregnancy, in fact, the first 2 and 3 weeks of pregnancy determine how a baby will form. It determines all the organs of the body, from your brain down to your skin. We call it the tegumen. We look at the legs and all that. They've already been determined by the time we're on 3 weeks, imagine, 3 weeks of pregnancy. So if anything happens between 0 and 3 weeks, that can actually cause a termination of pregnancy. And sometimes if that doesn't change and they grow with a malformation, like in the second pregnancy loss, that could have been a malformation at that time. So we ask ourselves, what could have happened during the formation of these two babies that could have caused the malformations or the pregnancy loss because of chromosomal abnormalities? And what we look at is the general health of the mother first. Is she okay, hypertensive, diabetic? She said she didn't have any issues, but did we check the folic levels? Because it's something we call folic, which is usually a vitamin that we usually, it's very important during the first few weeks of formation of the baby, especially the brain development and the spinal cord. We've had that second pregnancy loss. There was a problem with the brain formation. So did we really look at the folic levels at that point? Could it have been, there's a study someone was doing on whether the folic levels really affect, but it actually has some significance in terms of how the baby forms. So there could be a malnutrition, not a malnutrition, but a small nutritional deficiency that could have been there, but we have to supplement it. And remember, the iron and folic, we must add that to all pregnancies. Then we also look at the difference between the intervals of birth, because that really matters. We see that women who have a pregnancy that's close to each other, I'm not sure how long her intervals were between each pregnancy, they can actually cause a pregnancy loss. So we encourage women to get babies if they can have an interval of up to 3 years. So that's what we call a moderately healthy pregnancy interval between children. We look at her age. Is she, at her age, is she too young? You know, like teenage pregnancy. That is also a factor of pregnancy loss. Or what age are you, above 35 years old? Surprise, surprise, 35 years. We look at 35 years in pregnancy. So if you're above 35 years, there's some things that might change in terms of your the healthy eggs that you form, because women already have the eggs since they were born. So the healthy egg part is important for us to note. And then we also look at, there's several things we look at, you know, because it's not just about your physical, but the environment. Was there, what work do you do? Could it be, because I'm thinking it could have been a malformation in the two of them for her. So the last two could be related actually, not necessarily, not completely related. So is she exposed to smoke? Is she exposed to a lot of x-rays, radiology, things that could be affecting her? The chemicals also. If you work in a flower farm, sometimes you need to watch the insecticides you use, even in your own farm. So those are possibilities of what could have happened. Sometimes we are not able to identify at what point, but for her, I tend to think it could be a malformation that was not recognized early.
Okay, so the conversation today, pregnancy and infant loss, and our question of the day to you is, have you ever experienced this, and what is the biggest challenge in coping with this kind of loss? That hashtag is new normal, and we'll be getting to your feedback in a moment. And speaking of which, losing a child is perhaps the most painful thing a parent can experience, and it is is even worse if this loss repeats itself over and over. It is this pain that Edwin Otieno and his wife Felista have lived with for 7 years after suffering infant losses 7 times. But just like the rainbow that comes at the end of a rainy day, their rainbow baby was born, and they are hopeful that this child will live a full life. NTV's Naoma Sampao with that story of loss and hope.
For many couples, nothing gives more meaning to their lives than having children. This statement held true for Edwin Owino and his wife Felista when they set out to start a family 7 years ago. But their desire to have children was thwarted as they suffered successive infant and pregnancy losses. While the first baby died as a result of premature birth, the second one only lived for 2 days.
Watatu nikapata ball tena after 2 months kamiskari. Ya ine, that was 2015. Ya ine, tena nikamiskari. Ya tano 2016, nikapata twins. Moja kapasa after 2 days, mwingine after 3 days. 2018, 2016 November, tena nikapata mtoto mwingine through CS. Na huyo alikufa kwa tumbo, alizungukwa na umbilical cord.
Following the losses, Felista suffered a lot of stigma in her community. Whispers and rumors about her spread. Some said she was cursed for failing to have a healthy baby. Soon, she went into depression and confided in a friend.
Alikuja kwangu aka-open, akanieleza mambo yenye anapitia. Nikakaa na yeye nikamuhimiza. Wakati mmoja akawa ananiambia anasikia kama anaweza fanya kitu kibaya.
While Felista says she didn't seek medical help to find out why her babies died, doctors say antenatal classes could have helped detect any abnormalities with her pregnancies.
Blood group is an important test during antenatal care so that you can identify if, for instance, rhesus negative patients, the mother is rhesus negative and their partner is rhesus positive, then at about 28 weeks we give some medicine called anti-D, which helps prevent those antibodies from forming. And after delivery, we also test the baby. If they are rhesus positive, we give the mother another one just to prevent this issue.
Hata ma working mate tulikuwa naongea akasema nijaribu hata nje. Nijaribu kama naweza pata mtoto nje. Nikawaambia there is no need ya mimi kufanya such thing. Juu hiyo ndakuwa disobey.
For this couple, 7 years of trying have finally yielded a fruit. Baby Moses, their rainbow baby, was born 7 weeks ago and is strong and healthy. A rainbow baby is a name coined for a healthy baby born after loss due to miscarriage, infant loss, stillbirth, or neonatal death. Naoma Sampao, NTV.
The story of hope right there. 7 losses, but here they are with a rainbow baby. And Diana, this is a term that you use very often, and it actually is the pillar of still a mom. Talk about that.
A rainbow baby, as you have said, is a baby who has been delivered after consecutive losses. And a rainbow pregnancy is so unique in the sense that there are a lot of anxieties that these parents actually go through the moment they are pregnant, right from the first week through the first trimester, second trimester to the third one. Because there are questions of such as like with the previous experience reoccur, and it tends to be very difficult. And sometimes they even tend to develop obsessive compulsive disorders because the moment the baby is born, they'll keep on checking if the baby is okay, frequent hospital visits. Even if the baby tends to sleep for so many hours, you find the parents they keep on checking, is the baby breathing, is the baby okay? So it's a victory story, it's a story of resilience, and it takes a lot of psychological management in terms of processing consecutive losses so that you're in a place of stability to carry this pregnancy and even to nurture the baby in the right way, because you also need to be at a stable place emotionally to take care of the baby.
And talking about stability, when you have dealt with a parent or parents who've done or gone through this journey for the first time, what are the things you tell them to be aware of?
during the first loss, what we highly recommend is to acknowledge your feelings, because this question is very common. How do I grieve? How do I even get to process the reality that I have no baby? And most of the time, it's so difficult to pick anything healthy in the name of coping. And most parents report of actually being stuck in a place of isolation, in a place of burying their feelings, pretending that things are okay, and trying to distract themselves and to resume the normalcy. And they are not ready, actually. So we encourage them to acknowledge their feelings, to heal as a family. A family that feels the pain together are able to heal together. And feelings in the name of freely expressing these emotions with love, not with judgment, in the sense that I need to be strong, I need to move on. Remember, there's no hurry. Acknowledging your feelings will help you to know, what can I do? And knowing that it's okay to be overwhelmed in this space. You've lost a baby. That is very unnatural. And these emotions are very natural. So the kind of responses you're giving are very natural responses to an abnormal event, which is death. And after acknowledging feelings, we encourage families to do not set a time limit for their grieving experience, to experience it, to embrace each other, to become close together. Like for David and Anne, I really admire how they were able to journey closely together, to be strong, because loss can also break marriages. It can lead to a lot of challenges in the marriage as well. And apart from that, we also encourage them to engage in healthy ways of coping. And some of these healthy ways of coping includes talking about the experience over and over again, to engage your brain to release difficult emotional experience. Because apart from the emotions, we also have psychological trauma, and which can also lead to other complicated grief disorders or even post-traumatic stress syndrome. So after talking about it, artistically expressing grief through writing, journaling your experience, painting, making music, or even blogging. That is what our founder, Wanjiru Kihusa, started, blogging, and it opened up an avenue for so many women to find support. After artistically expressing grief, exercising, physically releasing difficult emotions, maybe going out for a walk, engaging your body, so that your body can be able to release dopamine, for you to feel good and to reduce the low moods that are very common in grief. And also sobbing or crying. Crying is a messenger of overwhelming grief. It's a messenger of unspeakable grief. We live in a society whereby bereaved families are told to be strong and you do not need to cry all the time, because crying looks like a symbol of weakness. But crying is very healthy emotionally, because you're able to release psychological trauma and tension to calm your body. So it's a way of communicating to your baby. I actually call it a love language to your child.
Wow, and definitely it is a journey. And speaking of coping mechanisms, we will hear from both Ashley and, of course, the Moremis on their journey of the same. But before we take this short break, we asked you that question: have you experienced pregnancy and infant loss? And what has been the biggest challenge in dealing with this kind of loss? Hashtag new normal. If you have that feedback, we can look at it now. Let's start off with Donette Mark, who said, that was my situation last year, October. The pain is out of this world, both physical and emotional. Lillian Wanyonyi says, it's a traumatic experience that I would never wish anyone to go through. You go through physical, psychological, emotional, and spiritual breakdown that you keep on asking yourself, why me? If you happen to have a weak support system, it prolongs the recovery process, lowers your self-esteem, and at some point, you even become suicidal. It only takes God's grace to accept that it happened and bless you again. Thank you, Lillian, for sharing. Lisa says, I have experienced both. It doesn't heal. You live with all the pain and guilt because you keep wondering if it is you that didn't do the right thing and caused their death. We hear you, Lisa. And Karemi, who says, very painful, traumatic, depressing, to say the least. Worst of all, it was through a CS, so you nurse physical and psychological wounds. That feeling of leaving the hospital empty-handed, not even sure how you will face other siblings or family members empty-handed. That pain you can't even wish your enemies to go through it. We hear you, Anne, and hugs to you. Olonde says, miscarriage is the worst punishment a mother gets. I tend to think you can easily get over a child's death easily than a miscarriage. What's hurting more is every time you see babies who would be his or her age mates, your pain refreshes. You ask, why weren't they given a chance to see their faces, to just see how their tiny eyes would look like? You wonder what they'd be like. It's a pain that never goes away. We hear you, Lorna. Mercy Martin says the worst experience in life, especially the loss of an infant. It requires support from all directions. You can literally run mad. It leaves you at a zero, and this is where I even questioned my God. We hear you, Mercy, and hugs to you. Beatrice Gishuru says, depressing, I say. I had a miscarriage, but later I conceived again to the full term, but the worst happened. I had labor pains for 6 hours. A baby was born, but dead. I was confused, but God gave me the strength to face it all. Wow, Beatrice. And a last one for now, Sandra Vita, who says the pain of losing a child can only be healed by a child. The biggest problem is the society believe miscarriage should not be mourned. It's the worst thing I had to go through. Sandra, we hear you, and that's why when we come back from this short break, we'll talk about the coping mechanism and also the stigma that surrounds those that have to face pregnancy and infant loss. Stay with us.
You love milk, and now there is milk that loves you. With Gold Crown lactose-free milk, you can enjoy the richness of natural cow's milk without any of the digestion discomfort. Gold Crown lactose-free, milk that loves you.
Washing is not equal to cleaning. Cleansoft equals real clean.
Cleansoft cleans not just the surface of the clothes, removing stubborn stains easily. Effective antibacterial agent goes deep into the fibers, removing 99.99% of the hidden germ. Congratulations! You are the winner!
Anachikile shop iko pale via M-Pesa. Ndio shop atatuchapelea usiku. Manze pole amekuwa missing. Nimemtafuta kila mahali simuoni.
Paul ni mteja.
Simekwambia story ni serious manzi.
Hajezi masimu. Wewe ni mwizi. Don't you dare. After Kenya nimekuona ukifanya na ule mwanaume, I think na qualify pia kukuita cheat. But kuhusu kutuambia Richard sioni kantaweza.
Kama unataka mbo chako anyamaze, lazima nyamazishwe.
Okay, tutamnyamazishaje?
Joy.
The procedure of reporting assets to Unclaimed Financial Assets Authority. Write an email to holders@ufaa.go.ke to request your profile to be created. Unclaimed Financial Assets Authority. Receive, safeguard, reunite.
Here at NMG, we are working very hard to ensure your favorite publications, Daily Nation, Business Daily, Taifa Leo, and the East African are readily available. In a bid to support the efforts to prevent the transmission of COVID-19, NMG has ensured our staff, our distributors, and their staff adhere to set guidelines. At our printing plant, all staff are required to wash their hands before entering the factory and must be wearing a mask. All workers either change their clothes on entering the factory or wear an overcoat. We are keeping doors open to avoid our staff touching door handles repeatedly. With our automated printing, contact with the newspaper is kept to a minimum, and at the packing process, the staff observes social distancing. Vehicles used to transport the newspapers are disinfected daily before the newspapers are loaded, and our delivery staff all wear masks and wash their hands regularly. Our vendors ensure that they sanitize every time they handle money and wear their masks at all times. NMG is proud to be able to safely meet your information needs. Stay safe, stay informed with our favorite NMG publications.
Huyo jamaa unaangalia hapo unamdespise atiana form. Hey, shida. Mungu halali, kuna day utapatana na yeye ameomoka mbaya. Gari ni ile nono na life inamwendea fiti na wewe umechapa. Mako. Do hivi, jisort na umorio, mjenge life. Usije ukaregret maze.
To get Gisort na Morio by Vuma, dial *811 *930#. Skiza na Nation.
Thank you for staying with Your World. My name is Gladys Gachanja. Our focus this morning is on pregnancy and infant loss. To help us with this conversation, still in studio with me, Dr. Karen Muthembo. She's an obstetrics and gynecology resident. Diana Jebgoske, lead psychologist and program manager at Still a Mom. And we have Ashley Muteti, executive director at Zurin Zilani Foundation, and David Gikungi and Anne Murimi, who are joining us with lived experiences. Thank you so much for staying with us. Now, every year, 2.6 million children around the world die in the womb or shortly after birth. But parents say their grief is all too often avoided as a taboo subject. Broken by their loss, parents often struggle to find the necessary support. But in Madrid, these parents are coming together to offer each other support. You don't get over a child is for life, alive or not. These are the sentiments of Paloma Costa Jimenez, who is 38, and she said this during a memorial ceremony in Madrid. Her daughter, Andrea, died on February 13th, 2014, right at the end of her pregnancy. Since then, she has had 2 other children, and Paloma continues to say, since people didn't see her, she was only with me 9 months. Some people think it doesn't count, but it does. It really does. She is my daughter.
Puede convivir con las lágrimas. Que tantos padres dan por sentado, tantas cosas que parece que tienen que ser así, porque estás embarazada y luego tienes un niño y cumple 5 años.
And that story brings us to the coping mechanisms. And I'd like to hear from Ashley and the Morimis on how that happened or worked out for them. Ashley, your first pregnancy, you lose your child. How was that coping journey?
Maybe I forgot to mention what Zurin Zilani Foundation does in a bit. Zurin Zilani Foundation is a foundation that helps women and families that have gone through preeclampsia, prematurity, and infant loss. So we create awareness on preeclampsia, prematurity, and infant loss, and try to support women who have gone through these unfortunate circumstances. As for coping, for me, it was very, very difficult. I didn't per se expect the baby to die because she was quite improving well in the neonatal intensive care unit. We were very hopeful that she was going to survive. She was gaining weight. But on like the previous day before she died, I was there with her, and the doctors, she started desaturating, and that means her oxygen levels started going down. And she completely turned black, and the oxygen levels went to 0. And I was just there looking at her and just asking God, you mean you can allow me to see my child die in front of my eyes, and it was so painful. So the next morning, the nurses had resuscitated her and intubated her. They put oxygen down through her lungs. So the next morning when I went and I saw her, she was in pain, and also she started desaturating again. And the doctors moved me to the adjacent room. And immediately at 11 on April 25th, 2018, I just had the beeps, and that was it. And they came in, they told me the baby unfortunately did not make it, and I can go and see the baby. And I went in and I saw her wrapped in white. And 5 minutes ago, I was with the baby, like alive and everything. Then right now she's already wrapped in white. So I took the baby out of the incubator and I held my baby. And I had seen a video online of a mother who held the baby after birth, and the baby came back to life. And that is what I was trying to do, trying to hold my baby so that she can come back to life. And I held her for like 5 hours until she started turning color. And the doctors were like, we have to take her away. She has to go to the morgue. And that period for me, it was very, very hard, even for my husband. And I'm very happy to see David and the wife together, because loss separates couples. A lot of couples break up at the point of loss, when they've lost a child, or maybe they've had a very sick child. People actually, the relationships end. So for us, we sought help. We went for therapy sessions, because we also didn't understand how my husband was grieving. For me, I wanted to be in that space, to cry, to see her pictures, to see her videos, and just to be in that space and try and remember how maybe she will be. For me, it was hard. I couldn't sleep, and for my husband, it seemed like he almost moving on with life, but he isn't. He's grieving in his own way. So for us, we had a bit of an issue there, because we didn't understand how, I didn't understand how he's grieving. Why is he moving on with life? Me, I'm in this space. You don't understand how I'm feeling. So coping for us started being very, very hard, but we sought help. We sought help from a therapist, and we started attending therapy sessions. And through that therapy sessions, now we began to understand that both me and my husband, we grieve differently. There's a way I want to remember that my baby. There's a way my husband also wants to remember my baby. And also surrounding yourself with the right group of people. Having a strong support system is important. For me, I really withdrew from my friends, from a bit of family. I didn't want to talk. I stopped doing the things that I enjoyed doing. I was just in a very depressed position. And in fact, 2 years down the line, like this year, is when I've started being active, because even of what the foundation is doing for women and for families, I have to get out of that funk and try and help other women who are going through, and parents who are going through loss and prematurity and preeclampsia, which is quite traumatic, which is a traumatic experience to go through. So it is important to surround yourself with people. And there are people, and it's important for people to also know what to say to people who are grieving, to parents who are grieving. Because you will tell someone, hey, utapata mwingine usilie, it is well, and it's not well. You've lost a child. There's nothing good about that, when are you, maybe someone asks you, when are you going to get another baby, and you're already mourning, So it is also important to surround yourself with people who are going to encourage you than bring you down. But at the same time, also, people don't know what to tell parents who are grieving. Yeah, but the best thing is just to support, let them feel your presence. At times, even not speaking at all is enough, just to be there and just be present. And if you want to pray, or you want to surround them with love and do maybe things in the house. Like for me, my friends came and they were serving tea to my friends, to the guests that we are having, that support. Yeah. Also, they're not saying anything, but they are doing actions, And I think that parents who go through loss need a strong support system, and for couples really to get help, because it can really disrupt the relationship that you have with your partner. Also, maybe speaking on loss, some people still think in this day and age that you're cursed, that maybe you've done something wrong, and it's funny because even someone who is educated would speak like that, maybe you need to look into your family, maybe someone has done something, but people need to realize that pregnancy also, it's really about your body, There are pregnancies that can go south, there are pregnancies that cannot maybe go to term, and you need help carrying through that pregnancy. So when someone experiences loss, it's not okay for people to think it's a curse or they are cursed or anything. Maybe they're just chemical reactions happening in your body, and it was your baby and yourself, you're not safe. And the baby was not during the pregnancy. So,
wow.
yes.
Thank you, Ashley, for sharing with that story, and definitely your journey on healing of pregnancy loss. Over to the Moremis. I mean, again, as we said, it's encouraging to see the two of you speak of this journey and smile while at it, but it's not been an easy one. How did you find your footing and to ensure that the two of you walked this journey together? Let me hear from David.
Wow, thank you once again. I think it is never so easy, and I agree totally with Ashley that men and women, different people, mourn very differently.
Yeah.
I remember Anne's reaction at first, especially with the second loss. The first loss, felt like, yes, this was a true note, and we needed to get another baby. In fact, our way of mourning, we did not take too much time between that loss and the next pregnancy for the girl now that we have, who is turning 4 this year. So that really was not very difficult. However, how Anne was handled at Kenyatta, because at that time she went to Kenyatta, really spoke into her healing process, because she wasn't really handled very well. And at that time I was away, so just coming back, of course, finding her very distraught in the morning. Then when we were discharged home, she would have nightmares. So at times she would grip me, hold me very tight, screaming or crying. It was really, really, really tough on her. And of course that had to also be tough on me as well. But throughout that pregnancy, because of that loss, whenever we noted that the baby has spent a few hours, has not kicked or played, we would rush for a scan. So we did more than 10 scans within that pregnancy, sometimes even thrice a month. I mean, just out of fear, because, the other one, we had perfectly, or rather what we thought was a normal pregnancy, but only to go for a scan and be told that the baby is actually normal. For this one, we did not want to take chances. However, that pregnancy was at least it was successful. But now coming to the second loss, I think that's really what hit us. It was tough. Now we went to the hospital expecting, the story of the anomalies that we were dealing with during pregnancy. Not many people knew. So when we went to the hospital, coming back home with no baby. So sometimes we are walking in the estate and someone asked us, I thought you guys were expecting a baby. Where is the baby? So of course it began hitting us really hard, really hard. Of course, as Ashley says, it looked like I did not care to Anne, because it looked like I moved on very fast, because I'm not crying like she's crying, because I'm not talking about the baby as much as she is doing. And really for me it was, we cannot both be crying. At least I have to be strong for you. Then I go seek for help elsewhere. So I'm at home, I have to be strong for you, pray for you, encourage you. But at the same time, I also need encouragement. So I had to go to my own boys club, where I would pour my heart out and tell them, really, this is what I'm going through. But whenever I'm at home, I cannot grieve as I would. I cannot cry, because if I cry, I would actually crush my wife. So I have to be strong, encourage. But it wasn't really easy. But I think what really helped, and I personally did not go to the professional counseling. I think it was enough for me to just talk it out with my friends, and just seeing also and make milestones towards recovery, I think was also very encouraging for me. So as I'm talking to my friends, then Anne went for therapy herself. So she came. Throughout that time, our relationship really strained. Our intimacy was gone. The care that we would give to our living daughter was also lost. So sometimes we had anger bouts. So we see her, sometimes she needs something from us, but you're angry at her for no good reason. So you are projecting that anger to her. You're not a good parent to her. So Anne became wild towards me, but I had to just bear the brunt of it and allow her to heal. At least the good thing is being a nurse myself enabled me to at least understand the emotions of grief. So I would sometimes, of course, support her, yet from a bit far. Sometimes I don't want to be on the receiving end of a knife, for example.
Yeah.
It's really angry. Sometimes she feels like we did not do much. Of course, I have many doctors within my circle, so who would come to offer support whenever they come sometimes, or even just when we are going for social events, you would hear one of us maybe talking about in our practice how they have actually been trying to deal with people who wanted to abort, but it went wrong, so they have to come now to seek help. Yet us, we wanted a baby. So of course that also now takes your emotions, a toll on your emotions, because you're wondering, them, they actually did not want a baby. Some even took contraception, but still got pregnant anyway. And you also throwing their babies, as we took every possible care that was within our disposal to just take lost them.
Now, your story is really amazing and encouraging. And again, I say the smiles on your face give encouragement to so many who are living with a lot of darkness because of their experience. And David has represented you quite well, but there's something I'd like to hear from your perspective, and Ashley touched on it. For 3 losses, life and society is looking at you in a different way. What did you face? What did people say about you?
The family was quite supportive, but I overheard, this information would get to me like, could be during your wedding, maybe somebody gave you a weird gift. I had no idea whether they were the plates or, I got so many gifts, so I didn't know. Maybe the gift had an issue. Then somebody else said, maybe during the dowry, we did this to the grandmother. Then another one came to my inbox FB and told me, Anne, you should check your past. I've never done an abortion. I've never been married. So I was wondering, which past am I looking at? And something else was checking, like, I should dig deep to where I'm married. Who is this guy? Who are the parents? Who are the great? What did they do? So we should slaughter, do some goat, that celebration, and cancel some things. I couldn't quite understand, and it weakened my faith. I love God, and I thank God that He has made me who I am today. It's Him who has given us this strength. But I was very weak. I was being tossed right, where, south, north. I would just think, so that's why this and this happens. And I started like kind of believing them. But thank God He came through for me, and it helped me to realize. But before I realized that, I started hating myself. I thought maybe I had something wrong with myself. Why all these losses? And at some point, the way he's saying that I became well. I actually became more and packed and left him, with the baby, the house girl, and we packed and left. And that's what pain does. It makes you feel like you're good for nothing. I thought I was good for nothing for David. Look at him. How I'm sorry, David. But that's what pain does. It makes you feel like you're good for nothing. Your work is just to lose and lose and lose. Nobody loves you. Even the society knows that you're just losing. And yeah, it takes the hand of God for you to come back to sanity and counseling. Diana, thank you. I'm just grateful that we are here and we are together. And yes, and the last thing is I would ask the doctor maybe about throwing the baby, for example, my baby was thrown in a dustbin while I was seeing, the girl, the firstborn. Maybe I would ask the medical people to, when the mother delivers the baby, if they're not alive, they should put the baby in a tray or something and then trash them when we cannot see. We just do it that prolong the mourning and the
Wow. Yeah. Before we cross over to Diana, wow.
Yeah.
As in, who does that? Really, it is important, and I think this is where you come in to speak to the medical fraternity to be sensitive to loss.
Yes, you're right. And sorry about that because it happened already. But ideally, what should happen is that once a mother has lost a pregnancy, this is a baby to her. And sometimes I know it happens in some hospitals, and it happens more often than not, that sometimes you take the child, we give option, we ask them, do you want to carry the body and go and bury it? Because there are some who want to go and bury their own baby. But there are those ones who will say, just bury for us. So what we do, we now put them in ideally they should be put well, they should be taken away from the mother, and then there's a way we discard any medical it's still tissues in the medical field, because we don't have mass graves and all that to bury them ourselves. So there's ways we discard we call them they could be infectious or non-infectious, but there's a way we discard tissues. But yes, we are not supposed to discard them in a way that is so insensitive to the mother. So we are sorry about that.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Oh wow. And Diana, the issue of having a good support system cannot be overemphasized, especially when these parents have to heal in a society that doesn't understand their journey. Speak on that.
When we talk of support system, Gladys, I will start right at the hospital. And you've heard about Anne's story. And it comes from a place of how did the information of death how was the information communicated to the parents? Because how was the news broken to the parents? Because the healing process is affected by how they were handled at the hospital by the healthcare professionals. How did they receive the message? How were they given the options to hold the baby? Were they given the options to see the baby? Was the baby treated like other living babies? Did they have a name? Did the medical professionals address this baby with a name? So it calls for a lot of things right at the hospital, even to the bereavement room. Because remember, Gladys, trauma starts from the time you're told that the baby is not alive, and you have to go into labor, and you have to push in a procedure that usually brings in feelings of elation and joy. But right now you have to push out of sorrow and pain, because you're pushing and there's no baby to show for it. There is no cry at the end of that pushing. And at the end of it all, that whole way to the next room, where you meet other nursing mothers, where you see other families meeting and celebrating about their child. And you have to deal with that trauma to the next room as you await your discharge process, as you await to know what next. Should I do an autopsy? Should I go for a burial option? How can I dispose my baby? So there are a lot of things that comes into play when it comes to trauma and support system. Even back at home, support system is very important, and it starts by the way we communicate to these families, because it is awkward. Most people struggle. How can I offer support? What can I do? And the best thing is to be there. You don't have to do anything. You just have to show up. You just have to do things around the house and allow the families to talk and openly express their grief. And even with the kind of comments that we say, utapata mwingine, huyo hakuwa wako. And people wonder, huyo alikuwa wanani, you know. And the thing of it's God's will. And bereaved parents, they ask themselves, now it was the will of God for me to lose my child. Why do other people have the opportunity to get children in an easier way? So there are so many comments that are very depressing out here. And the best we can do is to show up. Less of talking, but be there. Communicate. And even the issue of societal expectations. In the society, you realize that a child who has lost both parents is an orphan. A husband who has lost a wife is a widower. A wife who has lost a husband is a widow, right?
Yeah.
And there is no name for a parent who has lost a child, meaning it's very unnatural. It's such an awful experience. And with that, it means that the society has placed in a lot of pressure that we all have to have kids. And Gladys, it's not, our journeys are different. And it's still okay if it will take time for others to get kids. And remember, it's still okay if others cannot get kids. Yes. It doesn't make them less in the society. So it calls for a lot of sensitivity in how we communicate, in how we interact with these families, in the way we offer support in different contexts, right from the hospital, at home, at church. You know, Christians tell you, you need to fast and pray and God will heal you. I'm a Christian and yes, I advocate for praying. But how about making time to ask, how are you coping? What can I do? How can I journey with you? You don't just to hush people, fast and pray, you'll be fine. The joy of the Lord will be your strength. Yes, it is my strength, but how about hold my hands and listen to my story? So there are different ways of support, and I highly recommend we need to be sensitive. We need to be respectful. We need to be there. We need to be empathetic.
Very well said, Diana. And we take another short break on your world. But I hear you still talking to us on that hashtag new normal, even as we understand your journey with pregnancy and infant loss. Kerubo says, unless you have experienced this, you may never understand. Had a miscarriage 2 years ago. Since then, I get emotional when I see a pregnant woman. For this reason, baby showers are sad affairs for me. I have not attended any since then. I look for an excuse to get out of them the last minute. May we all heal. Amen to that, Kerubo. Fatma Ali says, I've had 2 miscarriages and I'm telling you, it's not easy. I almost went into depression. The trauma of seeing your friends' kids, I haven't healed yet. Once in a while, I just break down. It's so unbearable. And what pains me a lot is friends who got kids always asking, when are you having kids? Like age is catching up. Fatma, we hear you. Judy Nyambura says, terrible feeling, the pain, the attachment. Is there a reason that the rate of miscarriage today is very high? Also, the rate of trying to conceive has also risen. Could it be diet, lifestyle, family planning methods? I think it's a question worth investigating. Judy, Daktari will be addressing that after the break. Hilary Ngeno says it's so painful and traumatic. Only those who have experience know how it feels. Someone should go through a counseling session. Yes, Hilary, we are advocating for therapy. Rima Bell says, yes, I have, and the most painful thing was having no closure. I never got to know or ask the gender. Having my dreams come to a screeching halt was a painful pill to swallow. Years later, I look back and that God that I sailed through, and thank God that I sailed through. Today I'm all healed, and very bold breaking the silence on pregnancy and infant loss. Miscarriage is the loneliest grief of all. Rima, we hear you, and thank you for sharing. Well, we'll be looking at more of your comments even as you share your journey with pregnancy and infant loss. And also, we'll continue with this conversation even with our question put across to Daktari as to why we're seeing more of infant and pregnancy loss today. Stay with us.
Imagine mdosi wangu ametupa simu yangu ndani ya maji.
Mdosi wako kwa sawa. Venye Nkirota ameniambia ajui na akimpigia simu ashiki. Hi guy, what the?
For the women who deserve more, Moped is now in Kenya and more than 40 countries. With its nylon-free surface, new Moped has unique softness and up to 100% protection. Your skin will love it.
Bank wakasema mwenye ako na loan tuende kwa bank. Mtu vile alikuwa amechukua loan yake kiwango yake akareduciwa. Sasa ingekuwa maisha ni ngumu kabisa. Sasa nimekuwa marafiki na Equity Bank kabisa.
Do you need to send your parcel or document during this period? The Nation Courier Services, with over 15 years of distribution experience, will deliver it for you. We deliver to every corner of Kenya. Due to our strong distribution network, have overnight door-to-door service and same-day intra-city service with the security and safety of the client's shipment guaranteed. Your parcel is our priority. We'll deliver it for you. Contact us for delivery on courierservices@ke.nationmedia.com or call 0719 038 739.
Thank you for staying with us. My name is Gladys Gachanja. This is Your World, and we're focusing on pregnancy and infant loss. And speaking of which, the journey and challenges of maternity is often borne by mothers, a journey walked alone most of the time, especially in pastoral communities. The path is now slowly taking a turn as men in Samburu County are becoming actively involved in reproductive and maternal health teachings that were once seen as a taboo and a feminine affair, and disseminating the knowledge to their pregnant women and wives. Eunice Omolo reports on the changing tides in NTV's Womb Warriors.
Samburu County, set in the rolling plains, covered in a natural carpet of greenery. In this community, gender has for a long time demarcated what is to be of the manfolk and what responsibility is shouldered by the women, and the lines of division of labor are clearly marked and rarely crossed. Pregnancy, maternal and reproductive health tasks have been laid on the shoulders of the womenfolk for a long time now. Young and old from both the Turkana and Samburu communities gather in their tents, charting a new path, a path that will change the face of sexual reproductive health in Samburu County. Among them, Keshi Leodip is eager to share his story with his peers. He remembers vividly the darkest night of his life, when he lost his second wife and their last-born child during childbirth.
Nemitil bara na ko mikiata bagili piki ni dwali kwete ore na go sisimu yiki jona dwa kama jaribu na tawa ni mikiata bagana tawa ngore na temo ino bula bagu dwage ya ta na gore ku to sa sita kinya katai moru kire na koja na ishu yewuninya enye na ura isho ye unenya na inya na ngana
Death during childbirth was also not kind to George Ewoton, the Marti area chief and a father of 7. Death ripped off a part of him he had eagerly waited for. His mind called an empty 2 years on after losing his son to what he attributes to be due to childbirth complications arising from poor diet and lack of antenatal care for his wife.
Ikiwa sisi tulijiunga na hii, tulipata elimu. Hiyo elimu tukarudisha nyumbani. Sasa tuliagiza kina mama ambao wajawazito watembelee kliniki. Kila mara wanapohitajika na tunakuja pamoja nao. Kwa hii sasa juzi vile alijifungua hata hajaumana kwa masaa. Hiyo tu imetokea haijafika 1 hour. Just kitu kama 30 minutes na akajifungua.
Due to leaning on culture and distance from health facilities, a number of women had put their lives on the line under the care of traditional birth attendants. Eleman's wife was not exception.
Unakuwa naenda kliniki. Sasa mara kidogo tunasikia mgonjwa pale fulani, mara kidogo mgonjwa pale fulani, mara kidogo mgonjwa pale fulani. Na mwenye anakuja kututibu, yeye sio mtu akuuliza unamwona wapi. Mara unakuja unakuta anaganda mtu, anamganda zaidi, anamvinya sana, anamuumiza kabisa. So unapata kuona kwamba hata anabaki kama anaumia. Unakuta wakati ile ya kitambo, wakati watu tulikuwa tunashughulika na mambo ya kitambo, mambo ya nyumbani, hatukuwa tunahusika na hospitali. Maisha ya watoto hasa wakati anazaliwa inakuwa ni hatari, kwa sababu hasa wakati mtoto anazaliwa. Unakuta hata wakati mtoto anazaliwa, mwenye anazalisha yule mtoto mambo ya usafi hakuna. Hata kama ni mambo ile ya mtoto akizaliwa, kama mambo kata ile umbilical cord, hakuna hata ile vitu ambayo siko sterile. So tena unakuta mambo mingi, hata kama mtu anaweza kuwa mgonjwa anaweza ambukiza pia mtoto. So unaona wakati huo sasa vitu mingi ilikuwa ilikuwa inatuletea mshangamoto sana. Lakini wakati tulikuja kufahamu kwamba kuna njia nzuri ambayo inatusaidia, especially mambo ya kwenda hospitali, kwenda mambo ya clinic. So imetufanya sana tuwe huru.
Kuna faida mingi ambayo tunajaribu, ukijifunza kutoka hapa utafikisha kwa familia. Labda mama hakuweko kwa mafundisho, wewe utapeana ile habari umeona umefaidika naye kwa hospitali.
A very encouraging change of attitude there in Samburu, and we celebrate those warriors. And even as we talk about the value of hospital visits for maternal mothers, there is a question that came up earlier that I'd like Dr. Karen to actually translate, or rather answer for us. Can we have it up? Thank you. Judy Nyambura said, terrible feeling ever, the pain, the attachment. Is there a reason that the rate of miscarriage today is very high? Also, the rate of trying to conceive has also risen. Could it be diet, lifestyle, family planning methods? I think it's a question worth investigating. Now, do we have another question for Daktari? Okay, another from Ocheng who says, let me ask this question, please. My wife is pregnant, now the 3rd month. In this month, she had blood oozing like someone on periods. Then after an ultrasound, it stopped. Can this cause deformity in the infant? I think, Daktari, let's start with this one.
Okay, that's a very good question. I think he's asking because of the ultrasound,
yes,
whether it can cause a deformity.
But also the fact that she
was bleeding before, and
yeah,
now it has stopped. Bleeding can occur in pregnancy any time. It's usually a sign of something, and sometimes it might not be harmful as such. So we are able to monitor the baby as they continue. It might not mean that the baby has a deformity. And the ultrasound would show the deformity at this point. For the ultrasound, the thing that's used is sound waves, not X-rays. That's different. It's just the way a sound of a whale or a sound we make when we're talking. So there's a way it goes and bounces back. So we're able to get depths and be able to tell this is a hand, this is what. So that one is usually safe for pregnancy. For the X-ray, yes, that X-rays we don't do in pregnancy unless there is another problem that we need to find out in a mother, but we always shield the pregnancy. For the bleeding, it's important to find out what is bleeding, because it could be anything. It could be even the cervix. Maybe there's some infection of the cervix, which can cause a bit of bleeding. It could be the placenta when it's detaching. We had something about abruptio placenta. It can detach a little bit, but sometimes it resolves. Sometimes it's the placenta that's a bit lower on the lower side, closer to the cervix, so they can have some bleeding. But that needs monitoring. Does not mean that the baby has a deformity. Yes, so they need to be monitored closely.
Okay.
Yes.
Now to the second question, and I think I'll put some statistics to that. There's a report that was released just the other day by the UN Interagency Group for Child Mortality Estimation, and it was titled "A Neglected Tragedy: The Global Burden of Stillbirths." Now that report actually indicated that stillbirths are increasingly concentrated in sub-Saharan Africa. When we started off, you said it's like a pandemic.
Yes.
Why?
This is something that is still happening and shouldn't be happening at the rate it is happening. Yes, we say that sub-Saharan Africa has been getting better at let me talk about us. We're talking about us.
Yes.
Yes, we are getting better with our numbers, but we're still not yet there. Even one death is still a death, and it's still very painful, and literally shows the general health population, the health of the population of a country or the sub-Saharan or Africa. So we note that we have increased the numbers of patients who are going to the hospital, but we still have others who are still giving birth at home and still experiencing some of these problems, which are not even being put on in our statistics. So maybe even that number is a bit lower than what
real
it is.
situation
So yes,
is.
this is something we cannot avoid, especially when we're talking about infant mortality rate, which right now with the last we use the Kenya Demographic Health and Survey. That one it's around 39 per 1,000 live births. So that means that every 1,000 births there's 39 babies dying. And it can be anyone. It can be your neighbor, it can be you, it can be anyone. So those are things that we cannot avoid at all. So yes, there are things that we look at in sub-Saharan Africa. We generally look at the socioeconomic status. That's one of the things, because when you look at the indices here and you look at Europe, that's different. And in the Scandinavian countries, they are able to because of just the economic status, they're able to take care of younger babies, as I mentioned, the ones who are born a bit earlier, and us, we are only able to do up to 28 weeks. And in some countries, even 28 weeks, babies will still die. So that's one thing. We look at our changes in lifestyle, our nutrition. We actually have organic food, but look at the changes that are happening, even with our socioeconomic status as it is. We are eating more of the fries, which is cheaper than buying an actual plate of meal. So the health indices are not very good at the moment. So that's one of the things. And then alcohol, smoking. Look at Kenya. Our consumption of alcohol is quite high, even in the women, and that affects the pregnancy rates and even fertility rates, as she had asked rightfully. Our lifestyle really, really matters, and how we keep ourselves active or not, that really matters. We look at the teenage situation right now with Corona. We have very high numbers of teenage pregnancies, unbelievable numbers of teenage pregnancies. And it is actually noted that if a child, a 15-year-old, let's use an average of 15, and it's in the WHO, 15-year-old child gets pregnant, the chances of losing their pregnancy is 3 to 4 times as compared to a woman who's above 20 years. That is very, very high. Young age of pregnancy it's not favorable to taking care of a baby, especially when they deliver. That baby will not get the rightful treatment. Breastfeeding will be a problem. The normal feeding when they're supposed to start eating, that can also cause child mortality. We have infections like malaria, which we still haven't curbed. Nyanza right now has the highest number of infant mortality rate. Why? That area has a lot of malaria. We also have some areas like the eastern and all, but Nyanza is we're very particular in Nyanza, and somehow even Nairobi, we have a bit of a spike in the infant mortality rates, but that could also be because of the lifestyle changes. So yes, I agree, lifestyle changes are very, very, very important. Diarrheal diseases, thank God Corona has brought away that we wash our hands, we reduce this kind of diarrheal diseases, which are causing a lot of, they would cause a lot of infant mortality. Infant mortality was between the 1 month to 1 year, and even under 5 mortality rate was because of diarrheal diseases and acute respiratory infections. So we still have to manage all these infectious states, our socioeconomic status, our lifestyle in sub-Saharan Africa, because all that put together really affects our mortality rates.
All right, well said. And somebody is asking about the coping mechanisms, and I'd like to hear from Ashley and the Muremis. Ashley, somebody said they were told if you have another child, it will take away the pain. You had another child and she is bubbly and with you today. Did it take away the pain of the first loss?
For me, it didn't, to some certain extent, when I was pregnant, because initially I didn't want to get pregnant again. I had, even the doctors had warned me about getting pregnant again. They said they would give me like 2 years to get pregnant again. But I got pregnant like 3 months after my C-section surgery, which was very, very close, yeah? Bearing in mind that I had already put in place every measure to not get pregnant. The thing that most people don't discuss is pregnancy after loss, because pregnancy after loss is so heartbreaking, because you feel you will also lose this other baby. So for me, I felt I did not want to get pregnant again, because number one, I have not healed. I am also very, very scared about having another baby, then having to go through the same experience that I went through with my first baby. So the journey of this pregnancy had a lot of anger and resentment. But at the end of the day, I was like, I have to be also happy for the baby, because the baby will grow with a lot of resentment and a lot of anger, and I didn't want that. So after like a period of time is when I started now accepting the pregnancy, accepting that, okay, maybe things are going to be different. But I started getting preeclampsia again. Now the whole cycle started again. The feeling of, oh my God, I'm going to lose this baby. Things are not going to go well. How am I going to prepare? Am I going to bury another child? You know, so pregnancy also after loss is really, really hard. Even maintaining, not maintaining, but parenting even after loss. Because after we got the baby, yes, she was very small. She was 975 grams. She was in hospital for like 3 months, and she underwent like blood transfusions and all these things. And when we came home with the baby, we were constantly checking, is she breathing? Is she okay? She's standing, she's doing what? I remember I took my baby to hospital late at night because of colic, because I felt like this baby is not okay. She's going to die. I don't want her to die. And it took a lot of effort, even from the nurses there, because everyone now, because we've already familiarized with everyone because of the long stay in hospital, and my pediatrician, to really sit down and say, Ashley, you have to start being positive. This baby is not going anywhere. You have already been granted with this baby. She is okay. Everything is okay. Before we leave hospital, I was checking, check her intestines, check her what, check her eyes, check every single thing. You're being scared. So coping, for me, it was a bit difficult, but I would credit it to the support system that I had, my family, my husband's family, my husband as well, and my friends who are very close to me. The support really, really helped me. And also going through therapy. Therapy really, really came through for me personally.
Okay, all right. And to the Moremis, and I'd like to hear from Anne. 3 losses, but you have a 4-year-old or soon to turn 4-year-old daughter. Does having a child replace the pain of losing another? And have people told you to replace the other losses?
I'll say no, it doesn't replace. Every baby is unique. Whether the pregnancy was 2 weeks, 1 day, 3, we mourn all of them differently. So I would say every loss is unique, every baby is unique, and we just love them. Like you say, we are parents to 4, 3 angels and 1 living baby girl. Another thing is, yes, I have had pressure, not actually from people, but from myself. You know, I love kids. I've always said I want 7, so yes, that's my prayer. And I'm pushing myself that I want more and more children. So the pressure is so much from myself. Like I want more. I just want children.
Okay, now, David, are you on board with this vision?
Not at all. That's close to 10 years now. But I am not boarding.
All right, guys. Now, Diana, I bring up this question because over and over again, when the parents are grieving, you're told, find another child, get another child. It will replace the pain. Is this something that is actually psychologically viable?
It's not psychologically viable, Gladys, because what we advocate for is psychological healing after the previous losses. You need to be at a stable place emotionally. You need to be on the same page with your partner, because most women are even scared to engage in intimacy because of the fear. That was the process that that led to the first pregnancy. Why would I want to take myself there yet to lose another baby? So it takes a lot of healing emotionally, a lot of awareness, a lot of acknowledgement, a lot of reassurance and validations of feelings. And I admire how Ashley has brought it up in the sense that there was enough support, because the support system will help you recover, and it will help you even to gain the confidence to try again. So another baby will never replace, because the first baby or the second has a significant place. That's why we advocate for parents even to name their angels. Give them a name, create memories, make memories for them, celebrate anniversaries, look back and remember them, because they are still a part of your family, and forever you'll remain to be a parent to those angels. So it calls for a lot of psychological awareness, and also working closely with your gynae, so that you know in the next pregnancy, what do I need to look out for? You need to be very sensitive to your body. You need to know your biological history, because we are all different, but it does not replace the other children.
Okay, now we are about to end this conversation, and I'd like to hear parting shots from those who have lived experience. I'll start with you, Ashley, briefly. Your words of encouragement for those that are walking this journey just as you are.
Maybe I would like to add also something else. As a foundation, we really advocate for preconception care and visiting antenatal clinics. Personally, I feel if I attended antenatal clinics before, the doctors would have detected whatever I'm suffering from, and would be able to help me manage hypertension, and maybe I would have had a successful pregnancy. But it is important to have preconception care to know, are you ready to have another baby? Is your body ready to have another baby? And it is important to visit antenatal clinics as requested, because doctors' early detection and treatment can really reduce the chances also of infant deaths. My parting shot to parents who are going through a loss is to really stay together. You're the people who are feeling every single emotion. You anticipated to have a baby, and it's like it has been taken away from you. So I would advise parents to seek help to a circle of friends who have also experienced loss. Do not shy away from speaking about your own emotions, or being around your emotions and just experiencing your own emotions. Find support groups that can help you navigate through loss. Above everything, stay with your husband. I really encourage that. Stay with your husband, because a lot of couples fight. Even my husband and I, we really fought, but we found a way of just acknowledging everyone is grieving differently. A woman will grieve differently, a man will grieve differently. And so it's better for couples to really understand one another and go through this process together. And I'm praying for every single mom, dad, even family members who are experiencing loss, grandmama, aunties, and everyone who have experienced loss. So that would be my parting shot.
Thank you, Ashley. Thank you, Ashley. And to the Moremis, David, most often than not, it has been said that the man never stays, especially after a pregnancy or infant loss. Now, as a man who has stayed and clearly been of great support to your wife, your encouragement to other men.
I agree with Ashley that testing together can never be an option, especially in times of loss. You have got to be there. Sometimes it's not the easiest decision to make or really the most convenient, but I think when we walk down the aisle, we made the vows for better, for worse. I think for us, that has been our true north, and that for better, for worse. In those 3 times, it has been for us, and we chose to stick together regardless. It is also very important, the support system around you. Like for us, it was the church was very supportive. The nuclear family, our siblings, really came up to support us. And the church, of course, just coming, our pastors, the leaders at church, just fellowship, encouraging us, building our faith up. So that is very important. But I think I can never really understate the value of choosing to stay, being there for your family, because when you are there for times when they need you, even for times when you need them yourself, they will be there for you. And we are able then to navigate through life challenges together, as opposed to doing this as individuals. So if the pain is facing one person, that pain would be much less if it was faced by 2 or even more people. So as a couple, stick together, fight together, and push through together, even as God helps you. Thank you.
Thank you, David and Anna. And Diana, your brief parting shot in as far as this process is concerned.
Thank you so much, Gladys. And on behalf of Still a Mom, I would like to tell the bereaved community that we are here to offer psychosocial support. They shouldn't shy away to come out, because grief can be complicated, and sometimes most people struggle to resume normalcy. So it's our work to hold your hands, to find clarity, to find meaning once again. We have a community, we have a tribe of people who have experienced different losses, and we are here to journey with you in your unique experience. And even to the medical professionals, we are also there to train you on respectful bereavement care, on how best to communicate, the best ways of offering support, and above all, to push for awareness in the society about the importance of therapy, that it's not an act of weakness, but it's boldness to come out and to be vulnerable.
Thank you, Diana. Thank you. And of course, Dr. Karen, you're here representing the medical fraternity, but also insisting or emphasizing on the importance of checking your health status. Speak on that even as we close.
Yes, it's so important to know yourself first before you get pregnant. It's important to go walk into a hospital, get checked. They will check the usual things, the blood pressure, diabetes, because those two go together. They will look out for some things that need to be sorted. Even obesity literally needs to be sorted out prior to getting pregnant. So preconception care is so important. I will still say it again, come to hospital. Let's plan together. Let's work together. Doctors are there. We have been trained. We are ready to receive you and help you through your journey. If you're already pregnant, we will work with you. If you haven't planned to get pregnant, unplanned pregnancies, get to see a doctor, get yourself on contraceptives, because you will get pregnant and you do not want that pregnancy, and that leads to an infant loss. And after delivery, we have to examine you and see whether there's anything we need to treat for your next pregnancy, and make a gynecologist your friend. For the politicians and people who make policies, I think it's very important for them to really concentrate on maternal and child health, because they need to empower. We need to really work on empowering a woman, especially because they're the ones who feel the baby first. We don't get to monitor that baby 24/7, but the mother does. So empower her, let her learn, let her be educated, let her access a hospital.
Yes. Very well said. Dr. Karen Muthembo, obstetrics and gynecology resident, Diana Chepgusgay, lead psychologist and program manager at Stella Mam, Ashley Muteti, executive director, Zurin Zilani Foundation, and of course, a mother who's had lived experience with pregnancy loss, David Gekunge and Ando Moremi, who have a lived experience with pregnancy and infant loss. Thank you all for being part of this very crucial conversation. Before I close shop, I hear we still have a lot of feedback. Can we take that before we end the show? We have Celestine Mayende who says there is no easy way to heal from infant loss, but having a supportive family really goes a long way. Getting to a support group to help you do activities that would at least make you forget even for a minute. But most importantly, pray for healing of the heart. It's been 15 years and God has blessed me beyond measure. My little angel is for sure happy in heaven. We celebrate you. Celestine Reen Kim says some things are better left unspoken since the society believes miscarriage should not be mourned. There is no easy way to heal from an infant loss. Today we say we need to talk about it and ensure that everyone knows how to cope. Calvin Wenda says it is the worst thing to go through. Every year you imagine how the kid would have developed. Moms are affected the most since the connection had already begun. Imagine being in a maternity ward expecting to discharge a dead baby while other mothers are happy breastfeeding their young ones. My woman is strong. Calvin, thank you for standing with your wife. Edwin Maingi says losing a child is the most painful thing for a parent, and the one who experiences is the one who understands the pain. At times, once someone fails to question God, why me? But anyway, my wound is still fresh. I lost my infant on Saturday. Hugs to you, Edwin, and to your wife. And we pray that you get strength through this process. Regina Kemunto says, I went through 2 consecutive miscarriages, 20 weeks and 8 weeks respectively. The pain is still fresh. The emotional support I expected did not come through. God has blessed me 3rd time now and I'm waiting on it. Some people said very hurtful things that have gotten me very angry every time I remember them. God first. Regina, hugs to you. And the last one here from Lorna Mungot who says miscarriage is the definition of heartbreak, especially when it takes you years to conceive another that will take you a successful full term. Dear friends, stop asking others when they are going to have kids. You don't know the silent battles they fight within them. Above all, God wins. Amen to that, Lorna. Thank you for sharing. And I must say, these are just but a few of your comments, even as you engaged with us this morning. A lot of you coming out to share the experiences. We wish you a quick recovery, but of course, remember, each and everyone takes their own journey uniquely. But of importance, as Diana has said, seek therapy, seek a support system that works with you, and Daktari said, make sure that you keep your health in check. Time to bid you farewell, but tomorrow join Joseph Warungu as he focuses on land issues. Land continues to be a very emotive issue in this country, but also one that Kenyans seem ignorant about, especially when it comes to acquisition, inheritance, and the legal parameters. More on land matters tomorrow from 7 a.m.
I help women find